The snow fell softly on Evergreen Park, covering the benches and pathways in a blanket of white that sparkled under the strings of Christmas lights, woven through the bare tree branches. The large evergreen at the center of the park stood decorated and magnificent, its ornaments catching the glow from the surrounding lamps and casting prismatic colors across the fresh snow. Ethan Walker sat alone on a bench facing that tree, his expensive black overcoat dusted with snowflakes he didn't bother to brush away. His hands were clasped between his knees, his shoulders hunched forward, and if someone had looked closely, they might have seen the slight tremor in his jaw, the suspicious brightness in his eyes that suggested tears he was trying hard not to shed. It was Christmas Eve. All around him, families walked past bundled in winter coats, children laughing and pointing at the decorations, parents holding hands and carrying shopping bags full of last-minute gifts. Their joy felt like it belonged to a different world, one Ethan could observe but no longer inhabit. He was 43 years old, the CEO of Walker Enterprises, one of the most successful investment firms on the East Coast. He had wealth most people could only dream of. A penthouse apartment overlooking the city, a vacation home in the mountains. By any objective measure, he was successful beyond imagination. He was also completely, devastatingly alone. His marriage had ended 8 months ago. Jennifer had sat him down one evening in May and told him, with careful gentleness, that she couldn't do this anymore, that she'd spent 10 years married to a man who was never home, who prioritized board meetings over birthday dinners, who'd missed their anniversary 3 years in a row because of business trips. She'd tried to make it work, she said, but she was tired of being married to someone who was physically present maybe 30% of the time, and emotionally present even less. Ethan had wanted to argue, to defend himself, to point out all the ways he'd tried, but he couldn't, because she was right. He'd built an empire and lost his marriage in the process. And the worst part was that they'd never had children, something Jennifer had wanted desperately, but Ethan had kept putting off, saying next year or when things settled down at work. Things had never settled down. And now there would be no next year, no children, no family. Just him and his success and this crushing loneliness that seemed to intensify during the holidays. His assistant had asked him this morning if he had plans for Christmas. Ethan had lied and said yes, not wanting to see the pity in her eyes. The truth was he'd been invited to several parties and dinners, colleagues, acquaintances, people who felt obligated to include him. But the thought of spending the evening making small talk while surrounded by families felt unbearable. So instead, he'd found himself here, in this park, watching other people celebrate the holiday he no longer felt part of. He didn't realize he was crying until a small voice said, "Mister, why are you sad?" Ethan quickly wiped at his eyes and looked up to find a little boy standing a few feet away, regarding him with open curiosity and concern. The child appeared to be about 5 or 6 years old, wearing a bright red winter coat and a tan knit hat with bear ears on top. His mittened hands clutched a paper bag, and his round face was flushed from the cold. "I'm fine," Ethan said, his voice rough. "Thank you for asking." The boy tilted his head, clearly not buying this answer. "You don't look fine. You look like you're crying." Ethan managed a weak smile. "Just something in my eye. The snow, probably." The boy considered this, then shook his head with the serious wisdom only children possess. "I don't think it's the snow. I think you're sad." He paused, then brightened. "Don't cry, mister. You can borrow my mom. She's really good at making people feel better." The statement was so unexpected, so innocently kind, that Ethan felt fresh tears threaten. "That's very generous of you," he said carefully, "but I'm sure your mother is busy. You shouldn't bother her with—" "Oliver!" A woman's voice called out, warm but with an edge of concern. "Oliver, what did I tell you about talking to strangers?" Ethan looked up to see a young woman hurrying toward them, her blonde hair falling loose from beneath a cream-colored winter hat. She wore a gray coat over what looked like a cream sweater and carried shopping bags in both hands. Her face was flushed from the cold, and her expression was a mixture of concern for her son and apologetic awareness that he'd been bothering someone. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, reaching Oliver and placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I hope he wasn't bothering you. Oliver, we talked about this. You can't just walk up to people." "But Mom, he's crying," Oliver protested, pointing at Ethan with his mittened hand. He's sad and it's Christmas Eve. And nobody should be sad on Christmas Eve. The woman's eyes met Ethan's, and he saw her expression shift as she took in his appearance. The expensive suit visible beneath his open coat, the grief evident in his face despite his attempt to compose himself, the solitary figure he made on this bench while families celebrated around them. Her face softened with understanding and compassion. "Oh," she said quietly. Ethan stood quickly, suddenly embarrassed to be the object of this woman's pity. "It's fine. He was just being kind. Very kind, actually." He looked at Oliver. "Thank you for your concern, young man. You have a good heart." Oliver beamed at the compliment. Then he held out his paper bag toward Ethan. "Do you want a cookie? Mom and I made them today. They're chocolate chip, and they're really good. She always says cookies make everything a little better." Ethan found himself inexplicably touched by this gesture. "I couldn't take your cookies." "Please," Oliver insisted, shaking the bag. "We made lots, and you look like you need one." The woman, Oliver's mother, smiled slightly at her son's persistence. "He's not wrong. We did make quite a few, and honestly they are pretty good if I do say so myself." She paused, seeming to make a decision. "Would you like to sit for a moment? We were just taking a break from our walk to look at the tree." Ethan knew he should decline politely, make some excuse about needing to be somewhere. But the truth was, he had nowhere to be, and there was something about this woman's genuine warmth, about Oliver's innocent concern, that made him want to stay, even if just for a few minutes. "If you're sure I'm not intruding," he said. "Not at all," the woman said, setting her shopping bags down and settling onto the bench. Oliver immediately climbed up between them, positioning himself right in the middle, with clear satisfaction at having orchestrated this arrangement. "I'm Ethan," he offered, accepting the cookie Oliver thrust at him. "I'm Rachel," the woman said. "Rachel Morrison. And this is my son, Oliver." "I'm 5 3/4, Oliver announced as if this was a crucial detail. "Almost 6. That's a very important age," Ethan said seriously, taking a bite of the cookie. It was, in fact, delicious, still slightly warm, with the chocolate chips melted to perfection. "And your mother is right. These are excellent cookies." Oliver looked pleased with this assessment. "Mom's the best baker. She makes cookies for everyone. That's why we have so many today. We're taking them to Mr. Peterson and Mrs. Chen and the Rodriguezes, because they're our neighbors and friends." "That's very thoughtful," Ethan said, glancing at Rachel. She smiled, a bit self-consciously. "It's just a small tradition we have. Everyone's been so kind to us since we moved here, and I like to do something to show appreciation." She paused, then added, "Plus, Oliver loves helping me bake, so it works out well." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the snow fall and the families pass by. Ethan found himself relaxing slightly, the crushing loneliness easing, just a fraction in the presence of this kind woman and her talkative son. "So," Rachel said gently, not looking at him directly, but rather at the tree ahead, "do you have plans for Christmas?" Ethan considered lying again, but something about Rachel's tone, curious rather than pitying, genuinely interested rather than obligatory, made him tell the truth. "No," he admitted. "No plans." "That's sad," Oliver declared with his characteristic directness. "Everyone should have plans for Christmas. Mom and I are going to open presents in the morning, and then we're going to have pancakes shaped like snowmen, and then we're going to watch movies all day in our pajamas." "That sounds like a perfect Christmas," Ethan said, and meant it. "You could come," Oliver suggested brightly, turning to look up at Ethan with wide, hopeful eyes. "Right, Mom? He could come have snowman pancakes with us." "Oliver," Rachel started, clearly embarrassed by her son's impulsive invitation. "It's all right," Ethan said quickly. "That's very kind, Oliver. But I'm sure your mother has her day planned. And I wouldn't want to impose—" "You wouldn't be imposing," Rachel interrupted, then seemed surprised at herself. She looked at Ethan directly, and he saw in her eyes the same genuine warmth that her son possessed. "I'm serious. If you really don't have plans, if you'd really be spending the day alone, well, we'd be happy to have you join us. It's nothing fancy, just pancakes and movies and probably Oliver showing you every single toy he owns. But you'd be welcome." Ethan stared at her, not quite believing what he was hearing. "You don't even know me. I know you're sitting alone in a park on Christmas." Eve, looking like your heart is broken, Rachel said softly. And I know my son thinks you need someone to be kind to you, and his instincts about people are usually pretty good. She smiled. Besides, it's Christmas. If you can't show kindness to strangers at Christmas, when can you? Ethan felt something crack open in his chest, some defensive wall he'd been maintaining. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Oliver urged. Please? I never have anyone to play with on Christmas except Mom, and she's not very good at dinosaurs. I'm terrible at dinosaurs, Rachel confirmed with a laugh. I can never remember which ones are herbivores and which are carnivores, and apparently that's very important. It's really important, Oliver said seriously. Ethan found himself laughing, actually laughing, for what felt like the first time in weeks. I happen to know quite a bit about dinosaurs, he heard himself say. I had a pretty extensive collection when I was your age. Oliver's face lit up like the Christmas tree behind them. Really? Do you know about the Spinosaurus? The Spinosaurus was one of my favorites, Ethan said. Did you know it's one of the few dinosaurs we think actually spent time in the water? As Oliver launched into an enthusiastic discussion about aquatic dinosaurs, Ethan caught Rachel's eye over her son's head. She was smiling at him with such warmth and approval that he felt something shift in his chest. When was the last time someone had looked at him like that? Not with professional respect or polite courtesy, but with genuine human kindness. They stayed on that bench for nearly half an hour, talking about dinosaurs and Christmas traditions and the best kind of cookies. Ethan learned that Rachel was a nurse at the children's hospital downtown, that she and Oliver had moved to this neighborhood 2 years ago after her divorce, that she worked long shifts but always made sure she was home for the important moments in her son's life. It's not always easy, Rachel admitted. Being a single parent, managing work and childcare and everything else. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water, but then Oliver does something sweet or funny or impossibly kind, like offering cookies to sad strangers in parks, and I remember that we're doing okay, maybe more than okay. He's a wonderful kid, Ethan said honestly. You should be very proud. I am, Rachel said softly. He's my whole world. Ethan thought about his own life, about the empire he'd built at the expense of everything else. What did he have to show for all those long hours, all that success? Money, certainly. Professional respect, accolades, a corner office with a view, but no one to share it with. No child to call him dad, no one whose whole world he was. I should let you get back to your deliveries, Ethan said, though he found himself reluctant to leave this bubble of warmth they'd created. About that, Rachel said, and there was something hesitant in her voice, as if she was mustering courage. I meant what I said earlier, about Christmas tomorrow. The invitation is genuine if you'd like to join us. We live just a few blocks from here on Maple Street. The blue house with the white shutters. If you find yourself alone tomorrow and you'd like some company, well, we'll be there, probably still in our pajamas at noon. She pulled out a pen and a scrap of paper from her bag, writing down her address. No pressure at all, but the offer stands. Ethan took the paper, his fingers brushing hers briefly as he did. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You have no idea what this means to me. I think I do, Rachel said gently. I've had lonely Christmases, too. I know what it's like. Oliver, who'd been examining his remaining cookies with serious concentration, looked up at Ethan. You'll come, right? You promised to tell me more about the Spinosaurus. I didn't exactly promise, Ethan started, but Oliver's hopeful expression stopped him. But yes, I'd love to tell you more about the Spinosaurus. They said their goodbyes, and Ethan watched Rachel and Oliver walk away through the falling snow. Oliver turning back once to wave enthusiastically. Ethan raised his hand in return, then looked down at the paper in his hand, with Rachel's address, written in neat handwriting. He stood there for a long time after they'd disappeared from view, snowflakes gathering on his shoulders and in his hair, looking at that address and thinking about the unexpected kindness of strangers, about a little boy who'd seen a sad man and decided to help, about a woman who'd extended genuine warmth without knowing anything about who Ethan was or what he did or how much money he had. For the first time in months, Ethan felt something other than grief and loneliness. He felt hope. Small and tentative, yes, but real. That night, in his enormous empty penthouse, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Rachel and Oliver, about their modest Christmas plans, about the warmth and authenticity of their brief encounter. He thought about how Oliver had offered his cookies without hesitation, how Rachel had invited a complete stranger to Christmas, without knowing his name or his background. He thought about Jennifer's words from months ago. "You've built this incredible career, Ethan, but you forgot to build a life." She'd been right. He'd forgotten what mattered. Or maybe he'd never really known. At some point in the early hours of Christmas morning, Ethan made a decision. He got out of bed and began making phone calls, pulling strings, using resources. By 9 a.m., everything was arranged. At 10:30, dressed more casually than he'd been in years, jeans, a sweater, no tie, Ethan stood on the front porch of the blue house with white shutters on Maple Street. In his arms, he carried several bags. He rang the doorbell, his heart beating faster than it did before major presentations to the board. The door opened to reveal Oliver, still in dinosaur print pajamas, his face breaking into a huge smile when he saw who it was. "Mom! Mom! He came! The sad mister came!" Rachel appeared behind her son, also in pajamas, simple flannel pants and a soft-looking sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, her face free of makeup, and Ethan thought she looked absolutely beautiful. "You came," she said, and the surprise and genuine pleasure in her voice made Ethan's decision feel right. "I hope I'm not too early," Ethan said. "And I hope you don't mind, but I brought a few things." He held up the bags. "I have ingredients for snowman pancakes. I called my assistant this morning and she tracked down a recipe. I have hot chocolate mix, the good kind. I have a selection of Christmas movies because I wasn't sure what you liked, and..." He pulled out one more bag with a sheepish expression. "I have a Spinosaurus toy because I thought Oliver might like it." Oliver's eyes went wide. "A Spinosaurus? A real one?" "Well, a toy one," Ethan clarified, crouching down to Oliver's level and pulling out the surprisingly large and detailed dinosaur figure he'd had Rush delivered that morning. "But a pretty accurate one. See, it has the sail on its back and the crocodile-like snout." Oliver took the toy with reverent care, his face showing pure joy. "This is the best present ever. Oliver, what do you say?" Rachel prompted gently. "Thank you, Mr. Ethan." Oliver threw his arms around Ethan's neck in an enthusiastic hug. Ethan closed his eyes, hugging the child back, feeling something shift and settle in his chest. When was the last time someone had hugged him like this? With such unguarded affection and gratitude? "You really didn't have to do all this," Rachel said as she ushered him inside. The house was small but cozy, decorated with a modest Christmas tree and handmade ornaments. It was warm and lived in and felt more like home than Ethan's penthouse ever had. "I wanted to," Ethan said honestly. "You invited me into your Christmas when you had no reason to."